Patrick Mahomes walked into the NFL back in 2017, and it didn't take long before he became the guy every single other quarterback in the league got measured against. 3 Super Bowl championships. 3 Super Bowl MVP trophies to go along with them. 2 league MVP awards sitting on his shelf. For All-Pro selections. For most of the last decade, if you asked anybody who the best quarterback alive was, the answer came out fast, and it came out without any hesitation whatsoever. It was Mahomes, then there was a gap, and then everybody else was fighting over what was left. He redefined what people thought was even possible at the position, throwing sidearm no-look passes across the field, extending plays that should have died in the backfield, and somehow making all of it look completely normal by the time his 3rd season rolled around. But something happened last year that a lot of people don't really want to sit with for too long, because it doesn't fit the narrative we've all gotten used to. It was, by his own incredibly high standard, probably the roughest stretch of his entire career, and it didn't even get the chance to finish on its own terms. 14 games into the season, his ACL tore, and just like that, Kansas City's year kept rolling forward without its franchise quarterback under center. The offense that had been must-watch television for years suddenly looked ordinary, sometimes even shaky, and the conversation around Mahomes started shifting in a way it hadn't in years. So heading into this new season, you'd think there would be at least a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of a wait-and-see approach when it comes to ranking him. Instead, Sports Illustrated just released their quarterback rankings for the upcoming year, and there he is again, sitting comfortably at number 1. Still him. Still on top of the list, at least according to them. Which brings up a fair question that a lot of people are quietly asking behind closed doors. Is that ranking actually based on what he's shown recently on tape in real games, or is it built almost entirely on the reputation he spent years earning before things got rocky? Because when you actually break down what went wrong last season, and take a real honest look at who else is playing at an elite level heading into this year, there's a legitimate argument forming that Mahomes isn't the automatic pick for number 1 anymore. And what makes this whole situation even more interesting is that the guy applying the most pressure on him isn't some hotshot rookie or a flashy second-year breakout candidate. It's someone who's been playing professional football since before Mahomes even finished high school. Matthew Stafford. Yeah, the same Matthew Stafford who's been grinding away in this league since 2009, through bad Lions teams, through years where nobody outside of Detroit was paying attention, just turned in maybe the finest season of his entire career. He capped it off by taking home NFL MVP honors in 2025, and rather than riding that achievement straight into retirement like a lot of people assumed he eventually would, he's fully locked in and committed to running it back with the Rams for another season. Take a moment and actually sit with that. A guy in the later years of his career, well past the point where most quarterbacks start declining, just had the best statistical and performance year of his entire life, at the exact same time Mahomes was working through arguably his least dominant stretch as a starter, right before the injury cut his season short entirely. Until Mahomes actually gets back out there on the field and proves beyond any doubt that he's still that same nearly unstoppable version of himself from a few years ago, it's genuinely tough to make the case that he belongs ranked ahead of a guy who just won the league's most prestigious individual honor. And here's the thing, Stafford isn't operating alone in this conversation either. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have both been in the league for almost the exact same stretch of time as Mahomes, entering right around the same draft classes, and last season, both of them were putting together performances that stood right alongside his best work, and in the eyes of a lot of analysts and fans actually surpassed what he was able to do. Allen kept doing exactly what he always does, running through arm tackles like they're nothing, putting the ball into tight windows that most quarterbacks wouldn't even attempt, and doing it week after week with a level of consistency that's become almost boring to talk about because it's just expected now. Jackson, meanwhile, kept pushing the ceiling on what a modern dual-threat quarterback is even capable of, racking up numbers on the ground and through the air that still feel almost unfair when you actually sit down and look at the box scores. Line their game film up next to what Mahomes actually put on tape last season, and it's simply not the runaway argument in Kansas City's favor that it used to be for so many years. And that's before you even factor in Joe Burrow finally getting back to full health after a couple of seasons where injuries repeatedly held him back from showing his true ceiling, or Drake May quietly emerging as one of the most electrifying young talents at the entire position, someone who NFL evaluators are increasingly comparing to the top-tier guys already established in the league. Once you lay all of those names out side by side, Stafford, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, and May, the conversation stops being just about whether Mahomes still deserves that number 1 spot on paper. it becomes a much bigger and much more serious question of whether he's even a guaranteed top 5 quarterback anymore heading into this season. That's how dramatically things have shifted in the span of a single year. Now, to be completely clear here, nobody serious is writing Mahomes off entirely. Nobody with any real football knowledge is saying he's finished or that his best days are permanently behind him. One healthy, dominant, bounce-back season this fall is genuinely all it would take to end this entire debate and put him right back where people have always assumed he belonged, sitting comfortably at the top of the quarterback rankings with no real argument against him. He's still sitting right in the prime years of his career age-wise. He's still got that improvisational, backyard football instinct that made him appointment viewing every single Sunday for years on end. The talent itself hasn't disappeared overnight just because of one difficult season and an unfortunate injury. But here's the reality that people need to accept. Raw talent by itself isn't enough anymore to justify an automatic number 1 ranking. Not coming off a season that ended early with a torn ACL, and not with this much legitimate, proven competition nipping at his heels from multiple directions at once. The distance between Mahomes and the rest of the league's top-tier quarterbacks has genuinely shrunk in a way that it really hasn't since he first took over as the starter in Kansas City all those years ago. So the real question on the table becomes whether Sports Illustrated is actually right to keep him planted at the top of their rankings, or whether that placement says a lot more about who he used to be for half a decade than who he's actually proven he still is right now, heading into a critical prove-it season. That's the storyline quietly shaping up as we get closer to kickoff, and it might genuinely end up being the most compelling quarterback narrative in the entire league this year. Because for the first time in a long time, the answer to who the best quarterback in football isn't obvious walking into the season. Mahomes now has to go out and actually earn that top spot back through real, consistent play week after week, instead of just having it handed to him out of habit and past accomplishments. And if that injury lingers longer than expected, or if last season turns out to be the beginning of a real, gradual decline rather than just a one-off rough patch caused by circumstance, this could end up being the exact season that people look back on as the moment the torch quietly started changing hands in the AFC and across the entire league. Either way you look at it, every single eye in football is going to be locked in on Kansas City this year, watching closely to see whether Mahomes reminds everyone exactly why he's been the gold standard at his position for the better part of a decade, or whether this finally turns out to be the year the rest of the league catches all the way up to him for good.